What you just heard are not sound effects. They are excerpts from official case files stored here in the Nightmare Log. Each one represents a breach in our understanding of reality, a moment where the documented and the impossible collided. Tonight, we are opening files related to historical catastrophe. These 7 accounts have been cross-referenced with declassified government documents, survivor testimony, and in some cases, evidence that was never meant to be seen by the public. We will examine the official records of tragedies known to the world, the sinking of a ship, the meltdown of a reactor, the collapse of a town's economy. But we will go further, into the aftermath that was carefully redacted, the paranormal residue that lingers long after the news cameras have left. What you are about to hear is a presentation of the facts as we have found them. Before we begin, ensure you are subscribed to the Nightmare Log and have notifications activated. The patterns we uncover within these disasters are not random. They suggest an intelligence, a predation that feeds on human suffering. What we document here is not for the faint of heart, and you will not want to miss what we discover next. Case File NML, 1987, The Whistler from the Deep. October 28, 1942. The SS Pembroke, a 10,000-ton cargo vessel, is cutting through the frigid waters of the North Atlantic. Its mission: to deliver vital supplies to the Allied forces. The ship is a testament to wartime efficiency, a blend of seasoned sailors and fresh-faced volunteers. Among them is able seaman Edward Clark, a 22-year-old from Liverpool, known for his steady hands and skeptical nature. His post for the midnight watch is the starboard bow, armed with a pair of standard-issue bar and Stroud binoculars. The night is clear, the sea calm. It is, by all accounts, a routine patrol. The inciting incident occurs at 2:17 hours. Clark, scanning the horizon, lowers his binoculars. He hears it first as a faint, melodic sound carried on the wind. It is a whistling tune, unmistakably human. The melody is simple, cheerful even, a popular music hall song called "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles." He assumes it's a crewmate further down the deck, but a sweep with his torch reveals nothing but empty, painted steel. The whistling continues, seeming to circle the ship, never growing louder or softer. It feels directed. When Clark reports it to the officer of the watch, he is met with dismissive laughter. A trick of the wind, they say. The stress of the war. The slow burn begins. The whistling does not stop. It persists for 3 nights, always beginning precisely at 2:17. Other crew members begin to hear it. A palpable unease settles over the Pembroke. Men report seeing fleeting shadows on the periphery of their vision, shadows that move against the wind. The ship's dog, a terrier named Jack, refuses to leave the mess deck, whimpering constantly. Rationalizations break down. It can't be the wind. The tune is too distinct. It can't be a man. The sound moves in impossible ways, at times seeming to emanate from the water itself, just beside the hull. Edward Clark, the skeptic, stops sleeping. He spends his off hours staring at the sea, his logbook filled with frantic notes about the tune's duration and apparent source. The reveal happens on the 4th night. A dense fog rolls in, an unnatural blanket that silences the world. The whistling stops. For the first time in nights, there is silence. Relief is short-lived. At 3 o'clock, a new sound begins, a slow, rhythmic scraping against the hull, as if something massive is dragging itself along the ship's side. The crew gathers on deck, lanterns piercing the fog, revealing nothing but the slick, dark metal. Then, the whistling returns. This time, it is not distant. It is directly beside them, just over the railing. It is no longer cheerful. The melody is the same, but the tone is now a wet, gurgling mockery of a tune. A young deckhand, leaning over to look, screams not in fear, but in profound, existential horror. He collapses, babbling about a smiling face just below the waterline, a face that was all wrong. The aftermath is chaos. The Pembroke arrives at its port in Scotland 2 days later. The official log makes no mention of the whistling. It notes the deckhand was transferred to a psychiatric ward for battle fatigue. But the nightmare log has obtained the personal diaries of 3 crew members, including Edward Clark. All describe the same sequence of events. All mention that upon docking, the ship's hull, below the waterline, was found to be covered in long, deep gouges, as if clawed by something immense. The Royal Navy inspectors dismissed it as ice damage, despite the water temperature being well above freezing. The official record attributes the crew's distress to wartime hysteria. The nightmare log has classified the event as a Class 3 aquatic apparition. The entity, designated the Whistler, appears to be drawn to sites of impending maritime disaster. The SS Pembroke itself was sunk by a U-boat 6 months later, with all hands lost. We cannot help but wonder if the Whistler was not a cause of the tragedy, but a symptom, a predator drawn to the scent of death on the water. But the sea is not the only place where industry can invite the unseen. Our next case takes us from the cold Atlantic to the heartland of America, where the earth itself was poisoned and something else began to grow in its place. Case File NML 2006. The Rust That Breathes. Picher, Oklahoma, 2009. The town is a corpse, picked clean by decades of zinc and lead mining. The mountains here are not natural. They are chap piles, 100-foot-tall mounds of toxic mine tailings. The federal government has declared the area a sacrifice zone, buying out the remaining residents. The air is thick with heavy metals. The water is undrinkable. Most have left. Among the last is an EPA contractor, David Abram, a 48-year-old environmental scientist. His job is to monitor the slow, expensive death of the town. He drives a white Ford F-150, its air filter changed weekly. His world is one of hard, scientific data. ppm readings, soil acidity levels, groundwater toxicity reports. He is a man who deals in facts, not ghosts. The inciting incident is a sensor anomaly. On the morning of June 12th, Abram is reviewing data from a network of air quality monitors. One unit, stationed at the base of a particularly large chap pile on the town's outskirts, has recorded a persistent, localized spike in particulate matter every night between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m. The particles are metallic, consistent with the chat, but the pattern is wrong. There is no wind to lift them. It is as if the pile is exhaling. Abram chalks it up to a malfunctioning sensor or a nocturnal animal disturbing the dust. He decides to investigate personally that night. The slow burn begins with his first night observation. Parked 100 yards away, watching through thermal imaging binoculars, Abram sees nothing. But he hears it, a low, grinding hum, like rusty machinery turning over after a century of stillness. It comes from the chap pile. His own air monitor inside the truck cabin shows a slight, inexplicable rise in metallic particles. The rational scientist in him seeks explanations, subsurface cave-ins, shifting geology. But the data doesn't fit. Over the next week, the phenomenon intensifies. The exhalations last longer. The humming grows louder, developing a rhythmic, almost respiratory quality. Other contractors report hearing it, dismissing it as the wind through abandoned mine shafts. But there is no wind. Abram's health begins to suffer. A dry, metallic cough that no amount of water can quench. His dreams are filled with images of being buried alive in fine, gray dust. The reveal occurs when Abram, frustrated, decides to take a direct sample from the source of the emission. He approaches the chap pile at night, wearing a full hazmat suit. As he reaches the base, the humming stops. The air grows perfectly still. Then, the chap pile directly in front of him shifts. The gravel and dust do not slide. They bulge outward, forming a shallow, human-like impression, as if a giant had leaned against it from the inside. From this impression, a fine rust-colored powder begins to weep out, not falling downward, but flowing in a slow, deliberate cloud towards him. It coats his visor, and through the reddish film, Abram swears he sees shapes forming in the dust cloud, a screaming face, a reaching hand, before the entire mass collapses into a heap on the ground. The scientific part of his mind shatters. He flees. The aftermath is a cover-up of public health and corporate liability. Abram files a report, but it is heavily edited by his superiors. The official version states he experienced an acute stress reaction coupled with possible heavy metal inhalation leading to hallucinations. He is given a mandatory leave of absence. The EPA's final report on Picher makes no mention of the anomalous sensor data or Abram's experience. The town was simply evacuated and left to the elements. The government record attributes all strange phenomena in Picher to toxic exposure and mass hysteria. The nightmare log, however, has classified it as a case of geopathic resonance. We posit that the immense suffering absorbed by the land, the miners who died, the communities poisoned, did not simply vanish. It festered. The rust that breathes is not a ghost, but a new kind of entity, born from industrial sin and environmental trauma, a sickness of place that has become sentient. Picher, Oklahoma, is not just a ghost town. It is a patient zero for a new form of hauntings, one that we are only beginning to understand. Our archives show that trauma can seep into the very soil and stone. But sometimes, the breach in reality is not a slow seep, but a sudden, violent rupture. Our next case file comes from a place where science reached for the heavens and instead opened a door to something else entirely. Case file NML 1986, The Voice in the Static. April 28, 1986. Deep within the confines of a secure aerospace research facility in the Nevada desert, a team of 7 engineers is conducting a final systems check on a new communications array. The project, designated Project Echo, is designed to bounce signals off the ionosphere with unprecedented clarity. The lead engineer is Dr. Eris Thorne, a man of impeccable logic, a veteran of the Apollo program. His workspace is a cathedral of 1980s technology, banks of DEC PDP, 11 mini-computers, reel-to-reel data recorders, and a pristine, sound-dampened control room. The mood is one of focused anticipation. The test is scheduled for 2300 hours. The inciting incident is a glitch. At 22:47, 13 minutes before the main test, a secondary monitoring speaker, used to audibly track signal noise, crackles to life. Instead of the expected empty static, the room is filled with a low, rhythmic thumping. After a moment, Dr. Thorne identifies it, a human heartbeat. It is slow, steady, at about 40 beats per minute. The engineers check their equipment. Every system is offline. The array is not yet powered. The heartbeat is not being broadcast to them. It is being generated within the control room's own speakers. A junior engineer jokes about a ghost in the machine. No one laughs. The slow burn is a descent into digital madness. The team spends an hour trying to isolate the source of the audio anomaly. They find nothing. Then, at 23:55, the heartbeat stops. In its place comes a voice, filtered through layers of harsh static. It is a calm, male voice, devoid of emotion. It says only 2 words, aperture unstable. The team is stunned. Dr. Thorne orders the main test scrubbed. Over the next 48 hours, the phenomenon escalates. The voice returns at random intervals, sometimes speaking single, ominous words, collapse, echo, see. Other times reciting strings of prime numbers or complex mathematical constants that should be unknown to the system. The rationalizations, a prank, a Soviet infiltration, a shared hallucination from stress, all prove inadequate. The evidence is being recorded onto the master data reels. The horror is now part of the official record. The reveal is catastrophic. On the 3rd day, Dr. Thorne, working alone in a desperate attempt to find a logical cause, initiates a low-power diagnostic of the main array against protocol. The moment the system activates, every screen in the control room goes black. The voice returns, this time clear and deafeningly loud, without a trace of static. It is no longer calm. It is filled with a terrifying, ancient hunger. It screams a single sentence. The skin is gone. Simultaneously, the master data reels begin spinning at impossible speeds, spewing magnetic tape across the room. The temperature in the control room plummets. Dr. Thorne is found by security minutes later, catatonic, clutching a printout that shows a perfect, endless fractal pattern. Scrawled in pen across the top are the words, "It's looking back." The aftermath is a total information blackout. Men in unmarked uniforms arrive. Project Echo is shuttered. The official incident report, obtained through a heavily redacted FOIA request, cites a catastrophic electrical fault leading to temporary mass hysteria. Dr. Thorne was quietly committed to a long-term psychiatric care facility. He never spoke again. The government record maintains a cover story of technical failure. The Nightmare Log, however, has classified Event NML 1986 as a confirmed extra-dimensional signal intrusion. We believe Project Echo did not simply send a signal into the sky. It successfully opened a receiving channel. And something from a reality where concepts like skin and aperture have a terrifyingly literal meaning noticed. And it spoke back. The voice from the void was a warning from beyond our understanding. But some warnings are not spoken. They are written. And our next case file suggests that the most dangerous messages are the ones we write to ourselves. Case File NML 1929, The Wall Street Phantoms. October 24th, 1929, Black Thursday. The financial district of New York City is a maelstrom of panic. But our account does not focus on the trading floor. It focuses on the janitorial staff of the Aetna Trust building, specifically a 45-year-old man named Samuel Phelps. Samuel is a creature of routine, a war veteran who values order above all else. His world is one of soap, water, and wax. On the evening of the crash, as the last broken brokers shuffle out, Samuel begins his nightly rounds. He is equipped with his standard-issue mop bucket, a cart of cleaning supplies, and a profound disinterest in the affairs of the wealthy. The inciting incident is mundane. While cleaning the men's washroom on the 17th floor, Samuel notices something odd. The steam from his hot water has condensed on the large, polished mirror. Through the fog, faint lines appear, as if someone had drawn on the glass with a dry finger. He wipes it away, thinking nothing of it. An hour later, while cleaning an executive's office, he sees the same phenomenon on the window overlooking Wall Street. This time, the lines are clearer. They are numbers, columns of them, written backwards as if meant to be read from the outside. They are stock quotes, all from companies that collapsed that day, but the numbers are wrong. They are far, far lower than the day's worst prices. Samuel, a simple man, assumes it's a prank by the stressed-out clerks. The slow burn is a week-long haunting of information. The numbers do not stop. Samuel begins to see them everywhere a surface can hold a temporary impression. In the dust on a desk, the frost on a window pane, the condensation on a water glass. They are always financial figures, always predicting catastrophic losses hours or sometimes days before they happen. He tells his supervisor, who laughs and tells him to lay off the bathtub gin. But Samuel is a teetotaler. The rational world is failing him. He starts carrying a small notepad, transcribing the numbers he sees. He becomes gaunt, paranoid, convinced he is being shown a terrible truth. The building, once a place of order, now feels like a prison whose walls are covered in a ghostly, prophetic ledger. The reveal occurs on the following Thursday, October 31st. Samuel is cleaning an empty boardroom. The long mahogany table is covered in a fine layer of dust. As he watches, unseen fingers begin to write in the dust. Not just numbers now. Words. Sell. Jump. Trap. The messages write themselves with impossible speed, covering the entire table. Then, they change. The words scramble and reform into a single, coherent sentence directly in front of him. They are still here, in the walls. At that moment, Samuel hears it. Not the sound of the city, but a low, collective whispering that seems to emanate from the ventilation shafts and the spaces between the walls. It is the sound of countless voices, murmuring numbers, weeping, arguing, a symphony of financial ruin given a spectral voice. The aftermath is one of quiet tragedy. Samuel Phelps quit his job the next day. He was found a month later in his rented room, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The official coroner's report listed the cause as despondency due to poverty. The police noted his small room was filled with notepads covered in endless, frantic columns of numbers. They were dismissed as the ravings of a madman. The official record sees a sad story of a man broken by the Great Depression. The Nightmare Log, however, classifies this as a case of residual psychic trauma. We believe the sheer, concentrated agony of the crash, the fear, the greed, the utter despair, did not dissipate. It soaked into the very architecture of Wall Street, a psychic stain that occasionally bleeds through. Samuel Phelps, a man of simple perception, was somehow able to see it. The phantoms of Wall Street are not ghosts of people, but ghosts of emotion, of lost fortunes, and they are forever trapped, reenacting their death throes in the places where they were ruined. The phantoms of Wall Street were born from a collapse of human faith. But some events are so catastrophic, they seem to fracture not just economies, but the laws of nature themselves. Our next case file takes us to a town that was not merely haunted, but utterly unmade. Case file NML 1902, The Silence of Saint-Pierre. May 7, 1902. Saint-Pierre, Martinique. Known as the Paris of the Caribbean, it is a vibrant, cosmopolitan city of 30,000 souls, nestled at the foot of the volcano Mount Pelee. The volcano has been issuing warnings for days. Ash falls, sulfurous smells, minor tremors. But the populace is accustomed to its rumblings. Among them is Father Michel Leroux, a 60-year-old priest at the city's cathedral. He is a man of deep faith and pragmatism. On the morning of the 8th, the sky is dark with ash. The air is thick and hot. Yet, an eerie calm has settled over the city. The birds have stopped singing. The usual sounds of the market are muted. Father Leroux walks the streets, offering comfort, his black robes stained gray with falling cinder. The inciting incident is not a sound, but its absence. Shortly before 8 a.m., Father Leroux stands on the steps of the cathedral, looking up at the raging mountain. He realizes that the volcano itself has fallen silent. The constant, low rumbling that has been the city's ominous soundtrack for days has ceased. The silence is profound, oppressive. It is a void that feels attentive. In this new quiet, he hears something else, a faint, high-frequency hum, like a vibrating wire, that seems to come from every direction at once. It is a sound that feels alien to the natural world. He dismisses it as a ringing in his own ears, a symptom of stress. The slow burn is a mounting, unnatural stillness. Over the next hour, the hum persists. Animals become frantic. Dogs howl not in fear, but in what seems like agony, scrambling at locked doors. People report feeling a strange pressure in their heads, a sense of being watched by the mountain itself. The rational explanation, a lull in volcanic activity before the final eruption, begins to feel hollow. The silence feels less like an absence and more like a presence. Father Leroux, in his cathedral, finds he cannot pray. The words stick in his throat. The atmosphere feels heavy, charged, as if reality is being stretched thin over something immense waiting to break through. The reveal is not the eruption itself, but what precedes it by mere minutes. At 7:52 a.m., the humming stops. In the absolute silence that follows, Father Leroux, along with dozens of other survivors' accounts later gathered from outlying areas, witnesses the phenomenon. The air over Saint-Pierre begins to shimmer, not with heat, but with a strange, prismatic distortion. And from within this distortion, figures emerge. They are humanoid shapes made of shifting ash and shadow, silent phantoms that walk the streets. They do not scream or flee. They move with a terrible, deliberate purpose, gliding towards buildings, reaching for door handles they cannot grasp. They are not reacting to the disaster. They are an integral part of it. They are the herald. At 8:02 a.m., the mountain explodes. A pyroclastic surge of superheated gas and rock races down the slope at 400 miles per hour, instantly incinerating the city and all within it. The aftermath is one of absolute destruction. Saint-Pierre is wiped from the map. The official geological survey documents the eruption as a natural disaster of unprecedented force. The 30,000 deaths are attributed to the pyroclastic flow. But the nightmare log has accessed the diary of a sailor on a ship just outside the bay. His log, and those of other ships, describes seeing the shimmering figures in the moments before the cloud hit. They also report that in the days following, their radios picked up phantom transmissions from the dead city, moments of music, fragments of conversation, all playing out as if the tragedy were on a loop. The signals ceased after a week. The official record attributes the entire event to volcanic activity. The nightmare log, however, has classified it as a temporal rupture. We posit that the immense energy released by Mount Pelee did not just destroy a city. It momentarily tore a hole in the fabric of time. The phantoms witnessed were not ghosts of the dead, but echoes of the city's final moments, projected backwards into the instants before their own annihilation. Saint-Pierre did not just die. It became trapped in a paradox, forced to witness its own end before it happened. The silence was the sound of time itself holding its breath. The rupture at Saint-Pierre was a cataclysm of fire and time. But there are places where the descent into horror is not swift, but agonizingly slow. Where the disaster is not a moment, but a creeping realization that the world you know is a lie. Case File NML, 1984, The Bhopal Echo, December 3, 1984. The Union Carbide pesticide plant in Bhopal, India. A catastrophic gas leak has just begun, releasing methyl isocyanate into the atmosphere. The city is plunged into chaos. In the ensuing days, thousands die. Our file does not focus on the leak itself, but on the aftermath, specifically on a team of American chemical engineers who arrived 2 weeks later to assist with the safety assessment. The team leader is Dr. Evelyn Reed, a 38-year-old expert in toxicology. She is a woman of science, armed with gas chromatographs and atmospheric sensors. Her mission is to identify residual threats, to quantify the danger. She believes in numbers, not nightmares. The inciting incident is an audio anomaly. On her second night, while reviewing data in her temporary on-site lab, Dr. Reed hears it through her open window, a child crying. It is a soft, helpless sound carried on the wind. It is not unusual, given the tragedy, but then she hears it again from a different direction. And again, soon. The crying seems to be coming from everywhere at once, a faint, discordant chorus on the edge of hearing. Her Indian counterparts tell her it is the wind through the broken windows of the abandoned bustee, the slum adjacent to the plant. She wants to believe them, but her sophisticated audio equipment, set up to monitor for pressure changes, picks up nothing. The microphones detect only silence. The crying exists only to the human ear. The slow burn is a confrontation with an invisible, intelligent residue. Dr. Reed's team begins their work, but a palpable wrongness settles over the plant. The air feels thick, heavy, even inside their sealed environments. They all report the same symptoms: a metallic taste in the mouth, vivid and identical dreams of being chased by a cold, scentless fog. But the horror truly manifests through the water. The local water supply, contaminated by the leak, begins to show anomalous properties. When sampled and left in sterile beakers, the liquid develops faint, swirling patterns, not of chemicals, but of faces twisted in silent screams. These patterns are visible to the naked eye, but vanish when photographed or analyzed. The rational world of science is offering no answers. The toxic cloud has long since dissipated, but something else has taken its place, something that interacts with perception itself. The reveal occurs when Dr. Reed, frustrated and sleep-deprived, decides to take a direct water sample from a stagnant pond near the epicenter of the leak, against protocol. As she lowers her sampling bottle, the surface of the water does not ripple. Instead, it stills to an unnatural, mirror-like perfection. She sees her own reflection, but it is wrong. The reflection's eyes are wide with a terror she does not feel, and its mouth is open in a soundless scream. Then, the reflection raises its hand, not mimicking her, but pressing against the surface from underneath, as if trapped. A voice, not her own, whispers directly into her mind, clear and cold. "Why did you not come sooner?" She stumbles back, and the water returns to normal. The sample, when analyzed, is chemically identical to every other contaminated sample. But she knows. The horror is not just in the water or the air. It is in the memory of the event itself, given a voice. The aftermath is a retreat into official denial. Dr. Reed files a supplemental report detailing her experiences, couched in the language of mass psychogenic illness and extreme stress. It is ignored. The official narrative remains strictly chemical and medical. Dr. Reed left her field within a year. In a private letter to a colleague, later obtained by the log, she wrote, "We went to Bhopal to measure a poison. We found something else. The gas didn't just kill people, it scarred the very concept of the place. The crying, it's not an echo of the past. It's a warning. The event is still happening, on a frequency we're only just beginning to hear. The corporate and government records speak only of chemical exposure and negligence. The nightmare log classifies the Bhopal echo as a psychic imprint of unparalleled strength. The instantaneous death of thousands, combined with the prolonged suffering of tens of thousands, created a sentient memory of the event. It is a ghost not of a person, but of a moment of ultimate betrayal, and it lingers at the site, replaying its trauma and seeking an understanding that will never come. It is a wound in the world that refuses to heal. 7 case files. 7 moments where history, as recorded in official ledgers and newspaper headlines, was proven to be a fragile shield against a much darker truth. We have journeyed from the deck of the SS Pembroke, stalked by a whistling intelligence from the abyss, to the poisoned ground of Picher, Oklahoma, where the very earth developed a respiratory system of toxic dust. We listened to the voice from a void in the Nevada desert, a signal that spoke of skin and apertures, and we read the phantom ledger of Wall Street, written in the dust of a broken economy. We witnessed the temporal rupture of Saint-Pierre, where a city was forced to witness its own end before it happened, and we felt the lingering, intelligent grief of the Bhopal echo, a wound that refuses to heal. Finally, we stood on the overturned hull of a lifeboat and watched as the lost of the Titanic were not claimed by death, but conscripted for a purpose in the deep, dark cold. These 7 accounts from the log, separated by decades and continents, are connected by a single, terrifying thread. It is not merely that tragedy attracts the paranormal. The evidence suggests that these large-scale disasters, these massive, concentrated releases of human suffering, fear, and death, create a form of energy. This energy can resonate through time, as in Saint-Pierre. It can saturate the environment, giving rise to sentient sickness like the rust that breathes. It can even tear open temporary doorways, allowing things like the voice in the static to speak through, or entities like the Deepward current to harvest from our reality. The world is not as safe or as understandable as we are led to believe. The truth is often hidden in the footnotes of official reports, in the dismissed testimony of survivors, in the anomalies that don't fit the clean, comfortable narrative. The most dangerous monsters are not the ones in storybooks. They are the ones that feed on our collective despair, that dwell in the fractures of our greatest failures. They are the consequences we never calculated. Trust your instincts. If a place feels wrong, it probably is. Listen to the stories of those who have witnessed the impossible. Believe them, for in dismissing them, we blind ourselves to the warnings. Check on your neighbors. Be aware of your environment. The most profound breaches often begin with the smallest, most easily ignored anomalies. If you have a case you believe belongs in the log, a first-hand account, a family story that defies explanation, an official document with details that don't add up, describe it in the comments below. Your story could be the key to a future investigation. To ensure you are present for that investigation, subscribe to the Nightmare Log and hit the notification bell. The archives are vast, and we have only just begun to explore them. Stay vigilant. This has been a presentation from the Nightmare Log. Until next time, try to sleep,